Day two. Good morning, everybody. I hope that you're all doing well and you're feeling well rested. Certainly, probably more well rested than I am this morning. Thank you for joining this morning's speaker series featuring Meg Lewis, who'll provide a brilliant and no doubt very bright overview on creating a unique design style. My name is Anna Rita Mores, and I'm the chair for the School of Design at George Brown College here in Toronto. I'd like to welcome you to this morning's talk. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that George Brown College is located on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and other Indigenous people who have lived here over time. We're grateful to share this land as treaty people who learn, work, and live in a community with each other. Across the School of Design, we remain committed to identifying and removing systemic barriers to accessing college programs and services, and are committed to working towards strategies, tools, and actions to better support our Indigenous student population. Now, in a commitment to build connections and opportunities for students to engage with design's visionaries, YES features a week-long lecture series. The design-focused speaker series has been cultivated in an effort to provide a dynamic perspective and unique discussion opportunities for members of our community, including students and faculty alike. Honest advice for designers from really good designers connects the School of Design with those who've impacted the industry on a local and global scale through a focused thematic-based lecture. This is followed by an opportunity for engagement and dialogue using the YouTube chat. So please feel free to relay all of your questions from Meg there. Before I introduce Meg, I want to take a moment for a quick giveaway because we know that students love free things. And this giveaway is going to go to the first person who signed up for today's talk. So I'm looking for Nicole Frank. Nicole, you've won Meg's Thriving or Surviving print. Send us a message on Instagram to claim your print. All right, without further ado, Meg Lewis is an award-losing designer. I just want to point out that that is the bio that was sent to me. I would never call Meg Lewis a loser. Making the world a happier place through books, talks, writing, spaces, podcasts, workshops, and videos. Meg's works with happy companies to create friendly, personable visual experiences with an emphasis on clean, expressive type and bold colors. Beyond design, Meg combines comedy with her unique skill set to create businesses, projects, and offerings that turn traditionally boring subjects into fun, impactful experiences. Meg empowers individuals to discover their unique selves through books, video series, workshops, and talks titled Full-Time You. She also founded Ghostly Ferns, an international collective of designers and commercial artists, and Foolproof, a shared workspace for creativity and collaboration. Welcome, Meg. Moderating today's Q&A portion of the session is graphic design graduate Christy Jones. Christy works as a student designer and photographer at the In-Store and Studio. Their thesis project focused on gender exploration, aiming to encourage exploration outside of the famous genders and allow individuals to explore, communicate, and celebrate their identity. They're passionate about branding and editorial design, social justice, and crocheting. With that, I'm pleased to turn over to Meg, who will get started with her presentation.
Hi, hello, thanks for having me. That was such a great introduction, and what an amazing week of events and speakers. I was looking through everybody that you're bringing in, and it's very exciting. So thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you today because we're going to be talking about finding and discovering a unique style, whether that's through the creative style that you design in or create in, or if that's the way that you're dressing, the way that you're decorating your spaces and all of that. But before I get into that, I have to first start by explaining who I am and what I do in the context of allowing you actually to get some context to decide whether or not you value my opinion and you trust me to give you any sort of opinion about anything. So I'm going to quickly talk about what I do, and then we're going to stop talking about me so much and move on to you. So as that beautiful intro explained, I'm a designer by trade, but really I do whatever I can to get my brain out into the world in whatever way that means. So technically, I guess I'm a generalist, but I'm a specialist in that I have a very specific style and I have very specific subject matter that I use. And it's all stuff that's really interesting and exciting to me specifically. So within that, I do a lot of different things. I wear a lot of different hats. I just finally got one of those little baseball caps with a little helicopter on top. I don't know why it took me this long, but I just got it a couple of days ago. I'm very excited to wear it soon. Sorry I didn't bring it today though. Anyway, hats, balls, juggling balls. I have a lot of balls in the air. And these are all the things that I do, which you can see design is just one of them. I do a lot of different things in my career, and it's all whatever I'm excited to do at the time. My goal in this world is to make the world a happier place, and all I want to do is have fun all the time because adults are generally quite boring, and I don't want to be a boring adult. And I don't want to spend any moment of my life feeling misery. Just want to have fun all the time. So I follow what that is for me. All right, within that, some of the things that are making me have a lot of fun these days is I have a comedy meditation podcast called Sit There and Do Nothing. And in that podcast, I talk really slow like this, and it takes forever for me to get anything out, and I won't be doing that today. I also have a podcast I'm working on right now called the Meg Lewis Funhouse. You might be able to see in the back there, I have the cover that I worked on that we made in paper, which is pretty cool. And so that podcast is very character-driven podcast. It is recorded live from the toilet of the Meg Lewis Funhouse. And there's characters that come in, and there's a funhouse stuff. There's a lot of sound design. We're working on that right now, and it's probably the most fun I've ever had working on anything. I'm also the member of CoLoop, which is an artist management agency, but really we're just a group of friends that like to have fun together, and we like to collaborate as often as possible. I also teach online classes. I have a couple coming up within the next week. One is called Find Your Style, which is generally what I'm giving away for free right now. But it's a longer, way longer, more in-depth version of what I'm doing today. So if you like what I'm talking about today and you want even more and you want more hand-holding and all that, that'll be the class you'll want to take. I also teach portfolio strategy classes and workshops. I have one coming up in a couple weeks too, online and live. If you want to register for that one, that's available as well on my website, which is meglewis.com. I finally got the URL. Took me a long time. I don't know what happened to the other Meg Lewis. No longer in the picture, I guess. And lastly, I think this is the last thing I'm mentioning. I have a self-discovery workbook and comedy video series called Full-Time You, where I help you to create a career that is more reflective of what makes you amazing so that you can figure out what you could do and make an offer for the world that truly nobody else can. All right, so I don't really, it's hard to know what work to show because I am a designer by trade, so I do a lot of random work, and it's really hard as a designer to sometimes pick out what you want to show. So I decided that I just want to show you what I've made this month, which I think is easier. And most people haven't seen any of this stuff because it's all brand new and I haven't gotten my act together in order to like share any of this. So you're going to see what I've done in the past month. And most of it is digital stickers because everyone wants digital stickers now. And it seems to be the only thing people will hire me for anymore. And I'm fine with that because they're really fun. So this is a pack of stickers I made for a race that's happening in San Francisco later this month. Here's a set of stickers that I designed for Adobe, which was really fun because I had to use Adobe stock assets in everything that I made. So here you're seeing a combination of my illustrations and type with Adobe stock stuff, which is a challenge to say the least to figure out how to put stock photos and materials into your work. It was super fun to figure out though. And here is a set of stickers that I made for Pinterest, which is super fun as well. Having a good time with that. Back off of stickers for a second. I also earlier this month got to, and by month I do not mean May. It is May 4th. There's no way that I did all of this in 4 days. The past month, meaning 30 days. So within 30 days ago, I also painted a rain jacket for Oatly, the oat milk company. Why do they need rain jackets? I don't know. But truly brands are scrambling to have fun, and I'm glad to be a part of that. And you'll see on the right-hand side, I also painted 80 basketballs for Puma recently. I learned how to use spray paint. I don't normally make things with my hands. I am a designer. I have a design brain, and I'm used to undoing very easily. And so whenever I make things that are physical like this, it is very painful for me and takes me a very long time. And most of the time, I'm complaining. The last, maybe I can't remember how much I put in here. I think this is the last thing I'm showing. I designed a series of murals for a giant real estate conglomerate, which I'm a fan of that, but I am a fan of making the world a happier place through my design, and they allowed me to do that, which is pretty fun, and I'm totally okay with that. Oh, one more thing. Last week I launched my latest novelty font, and it is called Comic Sans, And you could also buy this and use it for yourself. It's available in 2 weights, as you can see. One's really puffy, the other one's not so puffy. Okay, let's move on. So, as you can imagine and tell while I'm talking about my work, I definitely have probably the absolute best job and career that truly anybody else could possibly have. And it's the best job and career because it's made just for me. I have this career where I'm able to do whatever is in my brain, I'm able to put it out into the world in many different facets, with working with many different media. And I just love it so much. And so I'm on sort of a mission to help everybody in this world figure out what they can do that's like that for themselves, what they can make for the world that is unique to them so that they can also have the most fulfilling job for them in the entire world. We all deserve that, right? And as you can imagine, through the work that I make and also through the way that I dress and through what's going on behind me and in my spaces, I have a style, design style, the home decoration style, wardrobe style. My style is really unique to who I am. I'm going to walk through how that works in a second and what that means for me and what I'm actually bringing into my work that is reflective of who I am. But this has made all the difference for me. Figuring out what I could possibly design that's unique to me that nobody else could design is a very hard thing to do. And I know that most designers spend their entire career trying to figure out what that could possibly be because it does truly feel like every style has been done. And so trying to figure out and articulate what you could make in a way that's unique to you seems impossible. But I figured out a way that can apply to everybody where we can figure this out for ourselves. So I think a lot of it goes back to when we're in school, when we're kids, when we're really young in school, we're taught this tactic of studying what successful people do and emulating that, learning from them and saying, this is the proven method that works. So I'll do that myself and it'll work for me too. And when it comes to design and creativity, whatever our medium is, we're doing the same thing. So whenever I teach my portfolio strategy workshops, I always talk about how I know when you're designing your portfolio website, you look at other people's portfolio websites to see like, what are people even doing? What do they do? This successful designer that I love, what are they doing? And oh, they're doing it this way. I'll do it that way too, because clearly it's working with them. And so we do this with everything. We do this with truly everything in our life, and that's because we've been taught that way. And that definitely was the case for me. I used to be so jealous or envious, whatever word you want to use, of other creative people because they were so much better at me than so many things. Just looking at somebody who's really good at hand lettering, I would just be so envious of their ability to like chalk lettering, hand lettering of any kind, because I am naturally not very good at hand lettering. I am the kind of person that still, truly to this day, if I have to do hand lettering, I bring a font onto my iPad and trace over it and make it a little different. I hand letter. And that is okay. That is one method for hand lettering. But if I don't have a font to start with, I cannot do it. Can't. I'm not good at it. Getting my pencil hand to go where my brain wants it to go is very hard for me. And so because of that, I'm not like a technically talented illustrator. And technically, I'm not a technically talented designer either. I know what I'm good at. And this is what I do is I lean on the things that I am good at and I utilize those things. I lift those things up as much as possible because we all have 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe more things as creative people that we are naturally better at than most people. For me, it's expressive typography, it's bright colors, it's clean design, it's showing a lot of personality. Everything else that I'm garbage at. I'm not as good at as other people at everything else. So it's about taking the things that I'm good at and pushing them forward because when people look at my work, they're probably envious of the things I'm good at. And we're all doing that with each other all the time. So at some point I had this epiphany to actually utilize the things that I'm better at than most people and push those things forward rather than trying to pretend to be someone that I wasn't and trying to emulate the success of people that clearly are very different from me and copy them. So when we're talking about creating a personal style, this applies to you whether or not we're talking about design work or whether we're talking about your personal style, the way you want to dress, it does not matter. This exercise truly works so well for anybody, no matter what we're talking about. I like talking about design because I think it's painful and quite a struggle for us to figure out what kind of design style we can have that's different from any other designer. So we're going to talk about it in that context today, but truly if you have somebody in your life like Aunt Diane, for example, who's like really struggling to figure out how to dress herself and it's been a lifelong issue, this is a conversation you can have with Aunt Diane and it'll still apply. Okay. So it doesn't matter who you are, this applies, but we're going to talk about design today. Okay. So I truly think that when you're talking about your design style and trying to figure out what that could be, we have to try our hardest, our darndest to break past trends as much as possible. Because what's happening is we're all looking at Pinterest, we're all scouring the internet, we're all looking at the same artist's work all the time, and we're seeing the same information. You and I, if we're on Pinterest, we're probably seeing the same, if not similar information that's based on trends and what's the most popular at the time. So what happens is inadvertently, or is that even a word? Probably not. I mean, maybe inadvertently, advertently, we are we're getting the same visual information. And so then what happens, whether we realize it or not, whether it's vertent or inadvertent, it's happening to where we're getting that visual information in our brain and we are probably becoming influenced by it. And then we churn out work that kind of looks like that inspiration, right? So that's how we keep trends perpetuating. We keep doing it, whether or not we realize that we're doing it. And what happens with, if we're talking about the way we dress, of course, trends exist because of marketing. Trends exist because marketing is generally trying to make us feel like we're not good enough in the bodies that we have. So we need to purchase more things that are on trend in order to make us feel relevant, make us feel like we're passing as normal. So we buy more things, we put them on our bodies, and then we're like, great, finally I'm adhering to the trends. I feel like I belong. I'm passing as normal. This is great. And then the trends change and we have to start that process again. All of a sudden we feel irrelevant. And so we have to constantly reinvent ourselves, buy new things in order to make ourselves feel good and feel normal and like we're passing as an average person in society that's not going to get made fun of. And so that's happening as well with design, because we are looking at visual information. We're like, oh, everybody's doing collages now. Oh no, I got to learn how to do collages now to keep up. And so you then all of a sudden learn how to do collages and then you figure it out and you're like, no, now they're doing, serif photography. Oh, I better purchase some serifs. I better figure it out. And so we're doing that all the time with our design style, trying to keep up with trends all the time in order to remain relevant and pass as like a successful, good, talented designer. And that's obviously kind of messed up that we're constantly having to like claw our way and figure things out. Where what I would like to have happen is we can all figure out what's a style that we can make that's unique to us. And maybe trends won't need to be as pertinent in our lives as much. We won't feel like we're constantly having to reinvent ourselves and feel dissatisfied with who we are naturally if that happens. You can be doing your thing that'll be different from me doing my thing, that'll be different from everybody else doing their individual thing. And then we all of a sudden have our own like niche area. We don't have competition because we're like doing a great job at our one thing. It's going to be great. So in addition to not trends and breaking through them, it's also our personal style should absolutely be taking what makes you who you are and translating that to visuals and communicating who you are as an amazing person that's unlike anybody in this world, translating it into visuals so that you can communicate who you are. The goal here is to have somebody look at your work and then meet you in person and not do that thing where they're like, I thought you would be different. We want people to see your work, meet you in person, and vice versa, and say, yes, this is the same person. This makes sense. So in addition to that, we also want to make sure that your personal style should really show off all those things that, those things that used to be really into when you were a kid that seemed a little unusual and you're still into them now, those things that have stuck with you throughout your whole life. We want to pay homage to that. Those are parts of you that make you who you are, that have been around with you through your whole entire life. And I love that lifelong part, because that lifelong part means that it's more than likely going to stick around with you for further in your life, for your entire life. If it's stuck with you until now, it's probably going to stick with you until then too, for a lot longer. So it's less trend-based information, more information that's based on who you are at your core. Okay. My favorite thing about this is articulating who you are at your core, of like what your personality is. what your lifelong points of inspiration are and influences are, and translating those to visuals, it means that there's so many nuances and intricacies in what your style is that truly nobody else could copy it because nobody else will know this information. Nobody else will have these like little influences in their work, like these two random things that don't seem to go together that make you who you are. No one will understand exactly what the influence is there. And nobody has your brain. So even if you have a style that's really unusual and amazing and people see it and they're like trying to study what you're doing because you're successful at it and they try to emulate you and they're like copying and influenced by your style, they're trying to do your style, they won't be able to because they don't have your brain and they don't know all that crucial underground information that makes your work your work. Okay, so all of a sudden becomes uncopyable. And when people send me illustrations or design and they're like, Meg, this person is copying your work, they're copying you, take them down, Meg. I will say 99% of the time look at it and I think, no, there's no way my brain would have done it that way. There's absolutely no way I would have made it like that. And sometimes the person made it in a way that's really interesting and I really love, but I would have never been able to do it that way. And so kind of like it eliminates that sort of competitive nature that I think we all have in our hearts because we're scared. We're scared of not surviving in this world and ultimately not thriving in this world, which is really scary. Earth is painful. It's a terrible place. And I just want everybody to be able to thrive at some point once we've reached survival. And this really helps me cope with that. So before you change everything about your design career and have a style and get paid for having that style and like make that your career, I want to talk a little bit about the difference between kind of like a designer and an artist. I think we kind of grapple with this question a lot about what's the difference between design and art. Is there a difference between design and art? And here's the way that I've tried to figure this out. I want you to figure out yourself where you fall on this spectrum. I think of design can be art, art can be design, whatever. I don't really care about that. What I care about is if you're solving problems or if you are working purely as an artist. At the beginning of my career, I was working in the startup world, doing a lot of UI and product design. And I moved into brand strategy at some point, and all of that stuff, that's problem solving work. That means that if you have an artistic style, you really need to try your hardest to set your own preferences and own style aside. So that way you can solve problems and alter the solution, which is the design solution, in order to fit the sort of the solution you found for that problem. And a lot of designers work this way. I'll be honest, they usually pay better for these roles as a problem solver because you're doing what you need to do to solve that problem and creating a design style that is the best possible style for that solution, right? Whereas artists, this is what I've come up with. Artists get hired more for their style, their vision, their brain. They're solving problems a little bit less because the problem usually has already been solved by their brain and their style. So here's where we're at. So this is where I'm at now. This is kind of where I'm at on this spectrum. I used to be way over on the problem solving side, and now I'm not. Now I don't really solve problems anymore. I have a style that I'm known for. People hire me for that style. And usually what happens is they've worked as a problem solver to come up with a solution for their problem, and my style happens to fit that solution. So I want you to figure out where you want to fall on this spectrum within your own career, because this is incredibly important. If you're on the problem solving side, that means you need to, if you find your style, that's great. But you need to often set that aside in order to solve these problems. But if you want to be more on the artist side of the spectrum, that's amazing. That means that you can find your style and shout it out loud and get hired for that style. So if you're on sort of the problem solving side of the spectrum, you're probably like, well, why would I need to find a style? And there is a multitude of reasons why you would need to find a style that's unique for you, for your design, whether it's creating your portfolio website and trying to figure out how to translate who you are into a portfolio that like helps you get jobs where you feel safe enough to be yourself. You need to articulate your style in order to showcase your personality visually. It'll help attract people that want to be around the real you, and that will help you get in that career, in that position where you have a fulfilling career where you're around people, surrounded by people, hired by people that allow you to feel safe enough to be yourself, which is a task that most people in this world are not able to complete, and you absolutely deserve it just as much as everybody does. So when you're dressing yourself, when you're decorating your home, all of these places are reasons to find your style, whether or not you're working more as an artist. Okay, so there's a lot of great reason for that, but I think that this exercise is really important to go through so you can figure out where you fall on that spectrum and keep asking yourself, because throughout my career this has changed so often. Okay, and when it comes to finding your style, it's all about list making. List making is always the best first place to start. It's not about visuals at first. It's all about figuring out what the data is that you're going to try and translate into visuals. So the first list that I encourage you to make is figure out what makes your personality unique. What are those like key traits of who you are that make you you? And there might be personality traits that are totally different from one another. Like for me, I'm very chaotic. I'm a chaotic person. I got a lot going on. I love a lot going on at once. I love being all over the place at once. But I also am very tidy, very neat, very organized, very clean person. So, as you can see, I try to figure out how to take both of these things about myself that seem visually opposite. I take parts of both of those things and I smush them together and try to translate those into two visuals coming together, which is what my personality is. Many things, many things coming together. And that is what makes me. So when you're making a list of your unique personality traits, it can be as long or short as you need it to be. And if you don't know the answer, ask the person or the people in your life that you feel like you can be your true self around, and ask them. You can tell them I made you. I had to ask people at the beginning, and that's how I knew all this information about myself. So try and write down a list of what makes you who you are, even if these things don't normally go together. They do, because they make you who you are. The next list I want you to do is come up with that lifelong points of inspiration list. So the things that were inspiring to you and you were really into when you were a kid that have stuck around with you your whole life. For me, stuff like mimes and clowns and circuses. I was really into, still am into physical comedy and people that are really expressive, as you know, through mimes and clowns. All of these things have stuck with me. I have always loved creating experiences for people to go through. And so trying to figure out what those things are that have stuck around with you your whole life, that's so important, because we're also going to take those things and translate them into visuals. And then lastly, I want you to make a list of the visual specific or creative specific skills that you have. So when we're talking about chalk lettering or hand lettering being not skills of mine, they might be skills of yours. But for me, this is a time to finally celebrate the things that you're naturally or have been trained really hard to get good at. Okay. So these are the things in design or in creativity that you are amazing at. When people look at your work and they talk to you and interact with you, they say, wow, I wish I was good as you at that. And we all have those things, whether or not we feel like we do. And if you don't know what those things are, absolutely ask somebody else that knows your creative brain and sees your work. Ask them what they think you're good at, because we all, no matter what, have a handful of things that we're naturally better at or trained to get better at than most people. So once you finish making those lists, in order to find your personal style, the next step is to actually translate those things into visuals. Like actually mood board. It's an important process. I like staying away from Pinterest. I like just collecting Google images. The uglier, the better. Because all that matters is that we're collecting visual information, and I'll get it more into this in a bit. But what we're going to mood board here is we're going to take our personality traits that we wrote down on our list and figure out what all of those personality traits mean to us and how we can find images that represent what those personality traits mean for us. And then we're also going to make a mood board of our lifelong points of inspiration, which I find to be a little less metaphorical and a lot easier than translating your personality to visuals. So whenever, like before you ever start mood boarding or going through this process, I really want to emphasize that you need to stay away from your medium. So if you're a designer, a digital designer like I am, and you are trying to translate your personality or find lifelong points of inspiration and all of that and trying to translate it into mood boards, stay away from other designers. Do not look at other design work. Do not add an ounce of design work into your mood board. Want you getting influenced by other people's style. And I will show you plenty of information about this in a second when I use myself as an example. But the other tip that is very important is once you make these mood boards, you absolutely need to look at all of them and notice the themes that emerge. Because you'll see throughout your mood boards that maybe you're seeing like kind of the same information, a similar color palette is emerging. You're seeing like similar themes over and over again. You also might notice that you see tension. You might just really love My Little Pony, and you might also really love metal music. And those like two color palettes are going to be very different. And so if you see areas of tension, that like two things that people don't normally put together, that is the magic, my friend. Those are the things that you can smush together and all of a sudden make something that nobody else has made before, because you're putting two things or three things or more things together that nobody else has put together before, because you are a cluster of things that nobody else has, that your cluster of personality traits and interests and skills combined. So that's how we're doing this together today. Okay. So give myself as an example of how I mood board and how I go through this process. One of the unique things about my personality, one of my personality traits, is that I love change. I have to constantly be trying new things every day, or I feel like I just become so sad. And that's a unique part of my personality that has been true about me my whole life. So I had to figure out what I like. What does loving change mean to me? What do I love about change? I love changing facial expressions. I love it when people can do that. I can do a really mean frown. Let me see. I have to relax my face first. Am I doing it? I think so, probably. So I've always loved that. So I Googled happy to sad changing facial expression, and I found the first image of this like white woman with her sad happy face with a mask. Added it to the mood board. I've always loved when different colors appear differently in the context of the light they're in, and how things can be like that. So I like tried to Google that to the best of my ability, found an image, brought it in. I love high contrast. I've always loved high contrast. Even before I could articulate that I love high contrast, I started wearing my hair bright blonde with I dye my eyebrows to be extra dark so I can have more contrast. I looked up high contrast, black to white, added some images in there. I love the changing seasons. Googled changing seasons. Found the first image I could find that showed all these seasons, and I added it in there. Okay. It's that easy. Another quality about me is I don't take things very seriously. People have often told me that that's something I need to change about myself. First of all, if you're wondering if you should change something about yourself, my barometer is figuring out how much harm it's causing. If I'm harming others or myself by not taking things very seriously, that's when I ask myself if something needs to change. But usually I'm not, right? And that means you do not need to change, okay? So for me, not taking things too seriously, I had to ask myself, what does that mean? Who have I always loved that don't take things very seriously? For me, it's about like taking serious subjects and making them really funny and playful, or adding googly eyes to things. I've always found that really funny. Infomercial products that take like mundane activities and make them really fun, very fun for me. So I had to figure out like how to search for these things, how to find images and throw them in the mood board. Another one for me is I'm proud to be weird. I've always been very weird. I think everybody's weird, to be honest. But so am I. And I had to think about what is weirdness to me? What has that always meant to me since I was a kid through until now? And a lot of weirdness for me is body weirdness. I've always loved unusual people, unusual bodies, people using their bodies in unique ways ever since I was a kid. So I had to like do some creative Googling and figure out what that meant. So when you go past your personality traits into your lifelong points of inspiration, this is the time to actually add literal images of the things that have inspired you and influenced you your whole life. And these are it for me. I've always loved comedy actors that use their face as much as possible, like Mr. Bean or Bozo the Clown, Lucille Ball. I love mimes. I love clowns. So at Marcel Marceau, I found this episode of this TV show that really spoke to me when I was a kid. Keenan and Kel, I love how expressive they both were with their faces. And so I found literal images of all of those things and added them in. So then you also made a list, hypothetically, in this process of your skills, the things that you're good at that most people aren't, which is like bold colors, lifting others up for me. I'm good at clean design. I'm great at creating like personable design, using expressive typography, all of that. These lists of skills gives you the what you're creating, how you're taking this visual information that you just discovered about yourself through mood boarding and actually figuring out what you're making with it. What are you doing with it? How are you filtering that visual information into design work? And it's through these means, because these are the skills that you're better at than most other creatives are. So when we go back, through those mood boards, we need to collect information. And this is when you can try and figure out your style guidelines. Now, style guidelines could seem really like a list of things that make you feel so rigid that you can't move, that you're like prescribed every move that you make within your own personal style. And I don't want it to feel that way. But we have to go back and look through these mood boards and say, what am I seeing? For me, I'm seeing a lot of black and white and a lot of bright colors. A lot of black and white, you see a lot of bright colors. So that tells me I need to use black and white in my work and bright colors as often as possible. Easy. I'm seeing a lot of expression-filled faces throughout all of my mood boards, right? So tension and themes are very important. Black and white, bright colors, that's tension, but it's also a theme. I'm seeing it everywhere. Expression-filled faces, I'm seeing that everywhere. So then when we go back to make our style guidelines, that's where we start to add these things. We're seeing blocks of bold color, high contrast. We're seeing weird bodies. We're seeing humor. We're seeing things that are really expressive. So here, when you're making your style guidelines, this is your opportunity to make sure that it's not so prescriptive that you are feeling like you can't move, but it is prescriptive enough to where it feels like you're able to communicate all parts of what make you who you are, right? So when we create the style guideline, it should be really energizing for you, as it is for me, because now every time I dress myself, I say, okay, what black and white am I adding? Also, what kind of bold color am I adding? And I can make sure that I'm dressing myself that way appropriately. And it helps me to showcase who I am and what makes me unique and amazing. And it helps me to feel really fulfilled by the way that I'm dressing myself, by the way that I'm designing, so that people can understand everything that makes me who I am together. It's very fulfilling and very exciting. Another thing about it that I love so much is it helps me to buy less. It helps me to buy way less. I'm so fulfilled by what I'm wearing now that I'm not dressing according to trends anymore. I know exactly who I am, and I love showing it off visually with the way that I dress and the way that I decorate my spaces and the way that I'm designing, that I'm communicating who that is. I no longer feel like I'm scrambling to keep up. I'm just doing this thing where I'm showcasing who I am all the time. It makes me feel more proud to be in my body. It also makes me feel like I don't need to purchase as much in order to stay relevant or pass as normal, because I'm not interested in passing as normal anymore. I'm interested in expressing who I am as a unique individual now. So if we're looking at design work, and we go back even to some of the work that I showed you earlier, this is what we're looking at now. This is kind of where I'm at with my design style, where as you can see, I use black and white, large blocks of color as often as possible, and that's what makes my work my work. So when we're going back to some of these other projects, I'm just going to go back to the very beginning. Boop, boop, ba-doop. You can see I do, especially for myself, because that's where I can really use my personal style, uses black and white, lots of bold color as often as possible. You're seeing expression-filled faces as much as possible. You're seeing faces and things because that's really important to my lifelong points of inspiration. And even whenever I'm working with another brand's color palette, like I am here, you can still see that I'm able to do what I do best. Expression-filled faces, large blocks of color, black and white, using bodies as much as possible, being weird, embracing weirdness. I got to make that little butthole on that dog. Made that little running salmon you see with the spinny hat, because these are all parts of me and what I'm interested in and what my personality is. So you can see that here too. I put all of that and inject all of that into my work as often as possible. And now, because I'm working more as an artist than a problem-solving designer, people hire me for this. They hire me for my personality and for this style. And it's pretty freaking amazing. Okay, now I just need to zoom ahead, and because I added animations to all of this, zooming awfully slowly. So I'm really excited for you to go through this exercise for yourself, because it is really fun and really fulfilling, but I think it's really important that you remind yourself to do this exercise as often as possible. I like to do it once a year, once every other year, just to check in with myself to make sure that the information is still accurate and correct. Because you grow, you learn new information, you change your perspectives on things, you move to different locations, you meet new people, your point of view and outlook on this world changes and grows and evolves. We all do, I hope. And so we need to make sure we go through this exercise often, just to make sure that we continue to be the same person and that we're reflecting our personal style as accurately to who we are at our core as possible. And that is it for me today. I'm going to do some Q&A in a second, but if you want to find me on the internet, it's meglewis.com or at your buddy Meg on social media. And let's get into some questions now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then hopefully I can see what's going on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Meg. That was wonderful. I really appreciate you being here, sharing your time and knowledge. I feel so amped up from that. It's lovely to see the way that you've created this niche for yourself and really found this unique path. And I think really inspirational for us as grads and current students to see like, okay, there is a path for each of us and we'll be able to find our way just, being our best selves. So thank you so much for that. I'll start off with, I'll start off with a couple questions on my end, and then we can jump to some audience questions. If you guys have any questions for Meg, feel free to just put it in the chat, and then Anna Rita can pull those up. So one thing I was curious about was at what point in your design journey did you start to break these conventions in this way, or was that something that just started from the get-go?
Yeah, yes and no. I think I had a little bit of a style. Even when I was in school and we were doing reviews of everyone's work, people would always say, well, we know which one Meg's is. And that was really frustrating to me because I couldn't see it myself. I could not articulate what my style was, but other people seemed like they could see it. And mostly it's just because I was leaning on the like few small things that I was actually good at. And so you were seeing my skills kind of just come forward in my design work. And so I'm assuming what was happening is anything that was like really clean but also colorful was probably my work. And that's just because I'm not good at anything else. And anytime I would try to design in a different style or like using different skills that I didn't have, I would get so frustrated by myself and I would get really unhappy with my work and compare myself to other people and feel really jealous about that and envious and all of that. And so eventually I just decided to call it what it is and embrace what I was good at and like really lean into it rather than constantly fighting myself and feeling bad about what I wasn't good at. And so that's what happened. I think a lot of us are natural learners. Some people like to acquire skills. They like to learn and like really figure out how to do something they're not good at, learn it and get really good at it. But that's not part of my personality. That is not me. I do not like, the kind of like almost like painting a room or something that it's really not fun while you're doing it. But whenever you finish, you can step back and say like, yeah, this feels good. I'm done now. I'm glad I did that. I don't like that kind of work. I never have. I only want to have fun all the time. It's so sad. I really don't like that kind of work where it's effort, it's hard, it's not fun. See, this is why exercising is hard for me. I can only do the form of exercise that is fun for me. That's why I take trampoline dance classes and bungee dance classes. I like to do the things that are actively fun for me the whole time, and it's fun when I'm done. But that's part of my personality. So it's leaning into your personality and figuring out how you can structure your career and everything that you do in order to actually bring yourself the most pleasure and the most joy and the least amount of misery. So throughout my career, it wasn't like a magical switch over all at once. It was very slow and like painful and trying to realize what was going on and eventually figuring it out through a lot of like therapy and trial and error.
Oh, well, that's great to hear. I'm glad that you did lean into that because it does seem that you've been a lot happier for it and you get to have so much fun in your work.
That's right.
We have questions in the audience. Wonderful. So Asna's asking, you seem so confident about your work and being yourself, and I love that. Do you have moments today where you feel less confident about your work? If so, how do you tackle those feelings?
Yeah. Thanks for that question, Asna. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it because yeah, of course. I'll go into points like everybody does where I'm just like, I feel like garbage. I don't feel connected to who I am at all. And I find that happens the more that I compare myself to others. I'm not immune to this at all. So sometimes I'll start to feel bad about myself again. I'll start to feel like, oh, I'm not this mold of like what a perfect person is supposed to be like, of what a normal person is supposed to be like. And sometimes, and it usually happens the more I ingest media. So the more I'm on social media, the more I'm subjected to marketing, that starts to happen to me. And I have to constantly stop myself and remind myself I'm different in the way that everybody else in this world is different as well. I am a unique person and I deserve to have a life where I'm allowed to be that person. And I have to remind myself of who that person is. And I go back through this exercise. I look back at my mood boards and I say, this is why I'm the way that I am. This is who I am. And getting back in tune with who I am is so helpful for me, because it's so easy to lose track of who you are and try to fall back into that objective of trying to fit into a mold of what somebody that looks like you is supposed to look like, which is constantly what marketing is pushing on us. And so I also fall into that trap a lot and feel like I'm less than and that I'm not good enough. And so I have to stop myself in those moments and remind myself that I am a unique person that's unlike anybody else. And I just need to keep doing that.
That's great. Definitely those check-ins and kind of meditative moments, breaks to keep back in touch. I believe we have some more audience questions. Thank you so much. So Sabrina says, such a fun talk. How did you find that balance between highlighting what you are naturally good at and when to develop or hone new skills?
Yes. Okay. I don't know if I have the best answer here. Because I tend to, I might seem like the world's most methodical person, or maybe I don't. I don't know how am I coming across as that? Um, I'm really not. Because I constantly chasing what is the most fulfilling to me and the most fun. If I find that I really am enjoying something that I am new to, and it's really fun for me, and then I chase that. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to have the most fun and play as often as I can. I'm looking to feel miserable the least amount of times throughout the day. So if something brings me joy and not misery, I latch onto that. And if it's something that I don't know anything about, I'll learn everything I can about it because it's so fun for me in that moment. And I truly, once you get to the point of, unfortunately, money and misery are tied together a lot of the time, and that's just because it's a capitalist society. We're taught that we need to be quite miserable all the time in order to make money, in order to get the lifestyle that we want, or be able to feed ourselves and our dependents and survive as humans in this world. And so we think a lot of times that we need to be miserable in order to have the lifestyle we want. And so it's important to me that attain that sort of survival baseline and then strive to thrive after that. So once you get the lifestyle you want, work on thrival. And for me, that's having as much joy and the least amount of misery as possible, which often means less money. I make a lot less money now than I was making when I was more miserable and doing things that didn't feel like myself. I am so much more happy now. I have so much more joy in my life because I'm thriving, but that also means less money. So it's kind of an equation that I like to tell everybody to do, of figuring out how much money versus misery versus joy they're looking for. For me, I just want joy all the time. As long as I'm able to survive, that's all that matters to me. Is surviving first is the baseline, and then moving to thriving, which is for me joy, and the least amount of misery. So that's how I figure out how I want to develop new skills, is what's bringing me the most joy. But that's just because that's my goal in this world, is to have as much fun as possible.
Capitalism really makes things so much more difficult in that equation, that's for sure. But it feels like you have that good hierarchy of needs going, get the base level, and then you can move your way up.
Exactly.
And we have a few more questions from the audience. From Amanda, she's saying, I've gotten advice in the past that you shouldn't let all your portfolio pieces look too similar. How do you stay true to your style while still showing variety?
Yeah, that's a really important point, because you will get you will, whatever you show in your portfolio, you're going to get hired for. So if all your pieces look the same, then congrats, you have a specialty, and it's probably that, whatever that is. And so I think it matters if you want to be a generalist or a specialist. First of all, there's nothing wrong with specializing. There's nothing wrong with being a generalist. you know, the more you can specialize, sometimes that can be more helpful because you're carving out a niche for yourself. You have less competition because you're the one person that's doing that thing. For me, I am a generalist by trade. I'll do any kind of design or not design, whatever I want, as long as I'm able to showcase my personality and my style. So all of my work truly looks the same in that regard. When you see my work, you're like, there's Meg doing Meg's thing. But because that's my specialty, is my style, I'm a generalist by trade. So you see the variation in types of work and how you can apply my style to all kinds of areas. And I think that also is really challenging when you don't have that much work that you've been paid to do that's in the area that you want work in. And so if you're noticing that everything's looking the same, you're like, dang, I wish I could, I wish somebody would offer me the opportunity to like do it this way or do it in this other area or for this kind of product. The important thing to know is that even me, all the time, I do this all the time, every year, at least a few times a year. If there is an area that I wish I want to get into, I always find a way to do it myself without relying on somebody else just believing in me and giving me an opportunity, even though I've never done that thing. So a good example is last year I was like, I really want to design rugs. I feel like I'd be good at it. I know that I could do this, but nobody's just going to come out of nowhere and be like, Meg, we think you could design rugs. Will you design rugs for us? Nobody's going to do that. I don't have an example. So what I always do when I'm curious about this, and this is what I did, is I find a way that I can design a rug within my own control. So I got on Society6, they have rugs, and I needed a rug for my bedroom. And when you design and order your own product on Society6, you get a large discount. So I could get a discounted rug if I just designed my own. And then I would have a real life example of a rug I designed. So I did that, put the rug in my room, took a picture, posted it, said, hey, I designed this rug for myself. It's available if anybody else wants it. Nobody bought it though. And I said, by the way, I'm really interested in doing more things like this. If anybody hears of anything, this is something I want to do. And it didn't happen instantly, but a few months later, somebody said, oh, hey, Meg, I remember you saying something about interest in designing rugs. I have a friend that has a rug company and they're looking for textile designers. And so they connected me with them. And then I got a line of my own rugs. So that's how I always get everything, is I find a way in my own control to do it just for myself. I put it out into the world. I say, this is something I can do. Believe in me. I can do it. Here's an example. And then I share my interest in doing more of it. And whether or not that translates to anything immediately or ever, it doesn't matter. That what matters is that I have an example and it lives and it exists. And then people can see that I'm capable of doing it. And I'm not just waiting around for somebody else to believe in me that I can do this thing that I don't have proof of being able to do.
Such great advice. And I'm sure, I know Amanda is a wonderful illustrator, not to expose her, but I think she'll be able to take that definitely moving forward with her work and creating her own projects. I believe we have time for some more questions. So Joe's saying, in terms of marketing yourself, what advice do you have for someone who does not have a specific style, but has a passion for just creating?
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. So I love, when it comes to marketing, I love injecting as much as your amazing self as possible. That does not have to be in your style, but it can be through just your physical form. Okay. So I think we constantly are questioning, and it used to be the advice back in the day when people would say like, oh, don't put too much of yourself on the internet. Somebody might see it. Oh, and then you'll never get hired because you're being too weird or something. And again, I will say that everybody deserves to work in an environment where they feel comfortable and supported and celebrated as themselves and not just tolerated. And so in order to create that environment, whether it's a social media following or whether it's a client base or whether it's the actual team that you're working for, we can use areas within our own control, which is social media, which is our own websites, in order to showcase who we are as much as possible so that we can attract the right people that like us for who we are as unique individuals who want to be around us. And most importantly, we scare away anybody who does not like that version of us, right? every time I design anything for myself, or do anything for myself on the internet, I always ask myself, how can I both do myself justice and communicate who I am openly and confidently, and how can I also scare away the people that I want nothing to do with? How can I make sure that they stay away from me and continue to stay away from me? And so that's always my goal, and I think it should be everyone's goal. And it's really scary to scare away people and know that there will be people that don't want to work with you, or see you and are like, ew. We don't like knowing that, but we don't want to be trapped in a situation. You don't want to get hired by somebody and realize that they actually don't like the real you. And so we do not deserve to work in places or around people that do not like us for who we are. So this is my number one tip, is to show who you are, even if it's weird and different, as much as possible, even if that's not through your personal style, because we want to make sure that you are attracting the people that like you for you.
Awesome. And I think that's a perfect way to finish things off. Great advice for our grads as they move forward and try to find spaces and careers for themselves where, they're appreciated for who they are. Thank you so much, Meg, for joining us. Really appreciate you being here and for sharing all your knowledge. We have some more events coming up this week. We have another speaker session at 3 p.m. today with Brian Collins, and you can sign up for that at yes.schoolofdesign.ca. There we go. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thanks again, Meg.
Thanks.